Good morning, members. We have to take the quorum. It is about time to make a start. Thank you very much for coming to this PWSC meeting. In 2016-17, as of last meeting, we have endorsed 13 projects totaling $121.35 billion. Together with 11 papers left over from June the 24th, we have 13 papers on the agenda. And these 13 projects involve an allocation of $17.3 billion. Just a reminder that if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest for today's items, please, before you speak, disclose the nature of the interest under ROP 83A. And under ROP 84, it provides for the voting arrangement for items with pecuniary interest. Item 1, Head 703-183GK, Reprovision of Shanghai Street, RCP, and Street Sleeper Service Units to the site on Hau Cheung Street, Yau Ma Tei, for the Phase 2 development of Yau Ma Tei Theatre project. Members are invited to recommend the upgrading of the project to Cat A at an estimated cost of $229.7 billion in MOD prices. And we started the discussion on June the 24th. We are continuing with the discussion. We have the list of government officials tabled in front of you. I don't propose to read them out. Yes, please. Questions? Mr. Wu Chiwai, for the first time, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. On this particular project, I'd like to put one question. We can see that the government is optimizing the site. When we discuss the public works and the design thereof, I'd like to ask the administration whether, in terms of the foundation and in terms of potential further expansion, whether the government will be making preparation for them. As time goes by, there may be certain changes to the requirements. If the structures do not have any spare capacity for future expansion, then they may not be able to cope with future demands. And we need to identify alternative new sites. So on this particular question, when it comes to public works and public facilities, would there be spare capacity, maybe 1 or 2 stories that can be reserved for future expansion? So when the time comes for further expansion, this can be undertaken. Now, for the street sleepers, we understand that the problem is pretty serious, and in our discussion, we understand that the number of places will not be able to cope with the known demand. Given the constraints of this project, the administration may not be able to develop this on a massive scale, but will you be providing extra loading and foundation to allow you to have further expansion in the future? Yes, Deputy Secretary. Yes, indeed, Chairman, we have revised the plan. Originally, we had 3 stories. Now we are building to 5 stories. On this particular site, the proposed height is 25 meters. Now, the member asked whether we're optimizing the site. Now, we are going up to 24-something meters in terms of height. As for site coverage, we're hitting something like 93%. So, in the site, we are optimizing the potential for the site. Of course, when we carry out the foundation work, we have to consider the facilities and the loading that will be required for the foundation strength and the facilities on top of the site will enable us to optimize the potential of the site. There will be no further capacity that we can reserve. Mr. Wu, Chairman, on many occasions we said that if we can increase the potential loading of the foundation, it doesn't add too much to the cost, but that would leave us flexibility for us to have further expansion down the road. With this foundation, if we can have an extra 1 or 2 stories, potentially, what difference does it make to the costing? Has the government ever considered seriously these kind of ideas? Yes, so from the Secretary, in terms of height and site coverage, they are really pushing to the limit. Mr. Wu, the planning department said that there would be a potential to revise this upward. Yes, I defer to the ASD. ASD, Mrs. Lam, Deputy Director. Chairman, on this technical issue, if we have to increase the foundation strength, we have to ascertain the usage of the upper floors before we can increase the foundation loading. Potentially, for the staircases or lifts, we have to increase the facilities. Now on the ground floor, we are maximizing the site. And these are the issues that have to be dealt with. As it was said a moment ago, this is technically a feasible proposal. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok, first time, 4 minutes, please. Chairman. For this item, this issue should have been raised 10 years ago when we talked about the Yau Ma Tei Theatre, and in the past couple of years, it should have been tabled at the HA panel for discussion, but because of the concerns of members, the matter has been dragging on, and finally we see this at the PWSC. In terms of design, there are a lot of changes. In terms of costs, how much more are we talking about in terms of percentage between this and the previous proposal? Second, this facility, this SSSU, the facilities have been upgraded. Will the standard become the norm for future SSSUs? 2 questions there. Yes, Madam Lee, Deputy Secretary. For the project costs, 2014, the 3-story model, the cost was $165 million or thereabout. Here, according to the paper, with 2 more stories, and because of the extra floors and lifts, it is $229.7 million. So a difference of $6 billion. As to the facilities for the SSSU, the ASD has offered assistance to improve the ventilation. There are windows, extra windows to be put there internally. Through the lotteries fund, there will be installation of furniture and equipment to improve the conditions there. And also in the light of members' concerns last time about the SSU being on top of the refuse collection point, whether there would be air conditioning provided. Now, we have made an arrangement. The SWD will provide a special subsidy to help the operators to meet the recurrent expenditure to allow air conditioning to be provided. Mr. Ma, if this goes through here, how soon will this be completed? Now, for WKCD, the CG Center is about to be completed. Now, with this facility, how soon will this be completed? Deputy Secretary, Chairman, if we get the funding, we get underway in the fourth quarter of this year, and Q1 2020 we see the completion of the project, and then the decanting will take place, and the old site at Shanghai Street will be demolished, and all these will be completed in 2020. What about the Yau Ma Tei Theatre, the provision of the backstage facilities and changing room? How soon will these be completed? Deputy Secretary, Yau Ma Tei Theatre Phase 2, this will form another project for funding request, and we will make available the precise date at a later stage. Mr. Yu Siwing, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, this SSSU has been dragging on for a couple of years. The administration has come up with an improvement plan, and obviously the conditions and facilities represent a huge improvement on the existing one. Upon completion, with the improvement, will this increase the waiting, the queue waiting to go in? And under these circumstances, do you have any idea how you're going to reduce the waiting time? You have 2 stories for other purposes. Are you going to consider, like you said a moment ago, it is unlikely that further floors can be added, but will you consider taking advantage of the existing facilities to increase the number of beds available there? And if so, how many spaces will become available?
Ms. Lee, I refer to SWD because I can provide some information that currently the Shanghai Street quarter have 70 beds, and when moved to Hau Cheung Street, we can maintain the same levels. And based on current information, the occupancy rate had not reached 70%, so there's still some spare capacity. And in terms of caring for the needs of the street sleeper, refer to SWD. Ms. Ma, thank you for your questions. Currently, the Shanghai Street SSSU, the occupancy rate is at about 70%. However, we keep monitoring the situation, especially the future service needs, and we have maintained some flexibility in place. And we expect after the reprovisioning, there are over 70 beds, and if there is an increase in need of services, and the current design. And for example, the 2 floors to be occupied by LCST, and in the event of special needs, we can keep the needs of the LCD in view to make further arrangements. So they have such consideration in place already. And for the new SSSU, we should monitoring the occupancy rate, and so that we can and offer timely services to those in need. Mr. Yu, even though the current occupancy rate is below saturation, as you say, it seems to be the best equipped in Hong Kong since it comes with aircon. And does that provide a motivation? And like I said, that the new SSSU was all of a sudden have a lot of people on the waiting list, and currently there are 915 street sleepers registered. And would that lead to more registration of street sleepers? And have we conduct such an assessment to SSU? and would it lead to an increase in the number of registered street sweepers, and would that provide motivation that we perceive to be unfair? And even though you have provide aircon below the RCP, and so in now such weather, why the SCU does not come with aircon? Have you made preparations for such, Ms. Ma? In terms of the needs and concerning the SSSU, in which aircon we provided, and this is rather as special circumstances, and on the enhancement service quality, on whether that would stimulate demand, we would lead to monitoring that, and based on existing data, and until the May 2015, the registered street sweepers is 936 people, and the occupancy rate of the entire SSSU in territory is about 80%. As for the year 2016-17, so we still see there's still some spare capacity to meet such needs. Dr. Cheung, first questioning 4 minutes. This is probably been dragging on for a long time because the administration have been unwilling to amend. First, for the SSSU, in principle, should not be in the same building of an RCP because we're not talking about an airspeed of an ordinary building, but rather serving the entire district. Documents have shown that the daily capacity is about 50 tons of refuse per day. We see in terms of the is a rather poor hygiene, wet, and with fleas and ticks. I hope that when they were constructed to put these two facilities together, however, we seems to be able to convince the administration otherwise. And the last time we got let's go. At least you can improve the facilities about also installing aircon, which we're glad to see. And the deputy director of SWG claiming that the occupancy rate of SSSUs are below 70%. However, we know that in the sector, we know there is a waiting list. So why is this happening? Because this street sleepers are sleeping in bunk beds, and the Shanghai Street facility required walking up the stairs. And a lot of street sleepers themselves are rather poor mobility. If you're on a wheelchair, you can forget about going up. If you're rather immobile and you're requiring you to climb up the bunk bed, I hope that you can organize a visit to the street sleepers to really check out their situation. They're of rather old age, and if they're not on a wheelchair and they've been suffering from different illness, and you're asking them to climb up the bunk bed every day, that will be impossible for them. Thus, we have spare beds available. So I found this government to be quite insensible. If we have such facility, we should try to make it user-friendly. And just like for the question of Dr. Yu, these are rather relevant questions. I visited all these SSSUs and talked with the operators. This is what they have been concerned about. First, there are insufficient bed spaces, and SWG always claim that there's spare capacity because these are bunk beds. And at the panel on welfare affairs, on visiting the Salvation Army SSU, and the officer stationed there said that we actually have a waiting list for the beds of the lower. How we have a spare beds on the upper bunk. So now you claim that no extra space is needed because there's spare capacity. So why are we keep insisting in adding beds, and now you claim that the capacity is only at about occupancy only about 70%. So this requires careful consideration. And even if we made a compromise and claimed the proposed facility to be excellent, and now the other SSSUs are in a rather poor shape, is it possible that we can take this opportunity to enhance the service level of all SSUs? This question has been raised by Mr. Ma, and the government administration have not answered the questions. Is it possible to adopt the standards of this SSU on all future and existing SSUs, and to make them uniform in terms of quality. We're not trying to obstruct here, but however, and for this facility, for those who best in need, have to be reasonable. Your question seems to exhaust your time. However, I will let the Deputy Director answer briefly. Thank you, member. And just to respond, whether the service level could be enhanced, we'd like to report that. And since the 1st of April this year, we have for the service unit, including SSUs, we have provide a subsidy for air cons. So in terms of hospital services, this we have made such step. And in terms of the bed spaces, we understand that the need for the street sleepers. And for the year 2016-17, through the employment internal resources, we have provided 20 extra spaces, and we continue to monitor the needs of the city. Let me ask the question. I'm asking enhance the service level of all units. Can we have the Deputy Director respond? And for the air conditioning, we have done some work in terms of providing subsidy, and especially on the hardware, for example, for the SSSU, we would assist because the SSSTI is a self-financed organization. We help them to apply to the lottery fund for funding on their hardware. I still don't get the question. Is it possible to install aircon for and other SSU facilities in Hau Cheung Street or Wan Chai? Dr. Cheung, you've asked your question. Okay, can you please answer this? Let's not talk about the new one first. So Dr. Cheung would like to talk about the aircon, whether SSUs could install aircon as well. Ms. Ma? And for the existing SSU, whether it's subsidized or as self-financing ones, and if they hope to upgrade their hardware, they could through the existing mechanism and to apply for funding through the lottery fund to upgrade the facilities. I hope you members to take notice that the 40 minutes will include a Q&A, and try to be concise. Mr. Chu, I couldn't see what seems to be blocking your face. Try not to put up so high. Next question, Mr. Chan, first round, 40 minutes. Just to follow up the previous question on the paragraph 11D, have also discussed about the installation of air conditioning system. And the ministry has set an opening aircon now with advocating to be a go green and turn on the aircon less. Were there any guidelines about turning it on throughout the year, or only certain temperature, or turn the heat instead, and the windows to be closed at all times, so that the odor would not enter the SSU? This is my first question. Ms. Ma. And for this reprovisioned building, for the aircon equipment, since the operator would review when to turn on the aircon subject to their own circumstances. This service is running on a self-financing basis, so the operator had autonomy into setting their own arrangements. If we decided that the aircon would be turned on throughout the year, so for this subsidy would be offered in full, would be offered on a reimbursement basis. The second question is, I understand, and after the reprovisioned, the Yau Ma Tei Theatre for our Chinese opera venue will be a win-win situation, and the RCP and the SSU reprovision, what is the increase in the number in terms of the area, and for the after the facility of reprovision, the YMTT, what's the area increase for the concerning the existing SSU in Shanghai Street and the ICP? It's about 560 square meter. If they reprovision such two facilities, it will be this vacated space will be used for the YTTT enhancement, because currently the YMTT is 300 seat arrangement. However, the lobby is rather tiny, and the backstage does not have sufficient space for the storage of props. We hope that we can use this adjoining site to expand the second phase of YMTT for the audience have a better experience without us spilling out on the street, and for the backstage would also be expanded for the training and the rehearsal of new talents, and both for space of rehearsal. And for the upstairs, we would plan to have training rooms, and so that it will deliver the best training results. Members, I haven't heard from the administration that in terms of the how much the increase in gross floor area. Can you provide some figures, making of comparisons?
Yau Ma Tei Theatre Phase 2 forms another project. So all the detailed design for the project, we don't have the detailed figures, although I mentioned the conceptual design. For the two facilities being moved to Hau Cheung Street, the site is 990 square meters. Mr. Chen, the extra floor space, how much more are we talking about? Any figures there? For the new project at Hau Cheung Street, it is 3,560 square meters, and that covers all the facilities. That's the grand total of all the facilities in that project. Mr. Su Ka-chun, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, I think this morning I have to thank the administration. On June the 20th, I put 11 questions to the administration. On June the 24th, I got a formal reply. I'm grateful to them for their prompt replies. Now, you can pretend to be concerned, but you cannot pretend to be there. I'd like to put a question to the officials, 13 officials there. How many of you have been to the street sleepers shelter? On June the 15th, together with Dr. Fernando Cheung, we've been there, and the questions that we put may not solicit a satisfactory reply. They will say that the occupancy rate is 70–80%. You have the bunk beds there, and you said that you can satisfy the demand. Do you know how long is the waiting list for the lower bunk bed? It is 70–80% at the moment. You have the bunk beds, and if you've been there, I'm sure that you would see a totally different picture altogether. My third question is to follow up on Dr. Fernando Cheung's question. We're not talking about the future. We're talking about now for the existing street sleeper centers in Hau Street, in Wan Chai, or wherever. Will they be air conditioned in the days to come as well? All right, Madam Lee, Deputy Secretary. Chairman, I defer to the SWD to talk about the waiting list for Shanghai Street. If I may make a response to Dr. Fernando Cheung here, I know the members are concerned about the facilities elsewhere, whether they will be upgraded as well. As SWD said earlier on, they do have a plan to provide air conditioning. As for this reprovisioning project, I hope the members will give their support. We have made a lot of revisions over the years. The users of this facility would like to see this built as soon as possible, and there will be more comfort in the conditions. And as I said earlier on, the Cantonese opera sector is waiting for the theatre, and for other facilities, they will have plans to upgrade them. While you want to upgrade the other facilities, I hope the members will not keep us waiting anymore. We like to secure member support as soon as possible. SWD, I will talk about the waiting list for the Shanghai Street project. Members are concerned about the arrangement for bed spaces. We are liaising with the NGOs to ascertain the needs, and NGOs have been very helpful, and if they can make the allocation, they would certainly do so. There was also a mention of the facilities in other centers and upgrading of them. We will liaise continuously with the NGOs. We have the current subsidy for air conditioning, so we should be able to make the arrangement for the hardware as well. Right, this is the third time we discussed this item. Dr. Edwin Yu, 4 minutes. First round, please. Last time, I did ask a question about the petrol or the gas filling station. You told us that you've conducted a risk assessment study, and there will be a setback in the design. In the paper, it is completely silent on the setback arrangement. Can you tell us why, please? Deputy Secretary, I defer to the ASD. Yes, please. In the course of designing this project, we did conduct a risk assessment study, and the findings show that we can use the site for this purpose, although we have to provide some mitigating measures. We understand that the distance between this and the petrol filling station is 18 meters, and we will not orient the site in a way that will make the distance acceptable. Dr. Yu, you don't have to set it back in order to achieve the 18-meter requirement, don't you? Mrs. Lam, the requirement is 15 meters. Now we're achieving 18 meters. Dr. Yu, can you make available the quantitative risk assessment to us after the meeting? Right? Can you supplement the information in writing? Thank you. Mr. Wu, second time, 3 minutes. My question is very straightforward. My question, in fact, wasn't answered. On different occasions for community facilities, I did point out that the administration should seriously consider the hospital authorities' example in dealing with the Kai-Tak Hospital, and that is extra loading should be provided in the foundation, so that should there be additional needs for facilities and offices, you will be able to cope with it, and that will obviate the need to identify alternative sites. Will this form part of your policy, and will you give us some information here if you want to add additional loading for the foundation? How much more are we talking about in terms of cost? Will this represent a small amount of the cost, like the hospital authorities project? If so, why don't you consider incorporating this spare capacity so that in future, should there be additional facilities that are required, you would have additional flexibility to cope with the situation? Because at the moment, you have to be scrambling all over the place for additional site, which will take an awful long time, and the demand cannot be met. Mrs. Lam? Yes, if I may, Chairman. We need to have some ideas about the uses, Mr. Wu. The service units, now what uses are you talking about? Maybe quarters, maybe elderly centers, maybe that kind of facilities. What's special about these facilities that make it difficult for you to work out the extra loading? Deputy Secretary, Chairman, now for this reprovisioning project, nobody knows about the future. The Kai Tak Hospital, they have the spare capacity for 2 extra floors. They have the constraints today in terms of height restriction, that the extra loading would take about a fraction of the cost. So they're making preparation for that. Isn't that better flexibility for the future? Yes, Deputy Secretary. Chairman, I really appreciate a member's suggestion, but for this particular project, if we have to build extra floor, it would not be an appropriate suggestion. It's a question of whether you're making preparation for it. Now, it's a question of whether under the policy we can provide extra loading for the foundation. My bureau cannot give any commitment for the time being, but we have optimized the site. Mr. Wu, has the government considered the example of the Kai Tak Hospital? Mr. Wu. Now, this is a broad question, and I don't think it would be possible for us to take up this issue here. I'm just asking the administration whether they would consider it or whether they would follow up. I don't think the officials can answer you. Well, we have the Deputy Secretary here, or Mr. Hon here. Mr. Hon, will you care to respond? I heard what Mr. Wu had to say, and my colleagues have already answered that we have to ascertain what sort of facilities will be added before they can deal with the foundation issue. I understand the suggestion. I think the Bureau will have to consider whether spare loading can be or should be provided. Additional funding would be needed at the end of the day. I understand that for some projects they have the spare capacity reserved, but I have to have some ideas of what use will be put to these facilities, what extra use. So should the government provide extra loading for all the projects? I don't think we can take this up here at this meeting, Mr. Wu. Now, I stress that this is not the right forum for us to go into this idea, although you are concerned about this issue. We have the Permanent Secretary from the Development Bureau, and your question has been responded to. I suggest that you take this up at the panel. Mr. Andrew Wan, 4 minutes first time, please. Chairman, my question is similar to Mr. Wu's, and it is related to Mr. Wu's. In fact, I find it surprising to hear what I heard. Now, in the OZP, there is no restriction on the plot ratio and the height restriction. I'm thinking of optimizing the site. Now, I find it surprising the chief executive has been on the receiving end of criticism for not identifying enough land. Now, we have the reprovisioning project here. The administration said that they have to consider the spatial, the ventilation elements, the visual elements. Now, we understand that we're not asking for 10 stories here, in these two meetings, members are asking whether there is any potential for additional floors to be provided. In the original design, why didn't you consider it? Is Deputy Secretary? Thanks very much, member. The members must have read the supplementary replies. We talked about the need for air ventilation. Mr. Wen, we beg to differ. We're not asking for 10 stories. We're not saying that with an additional floor it would compromise the ventilation for the West Kowloon in its entirety. Are you saying that, Deputy Secretary? Chairman, we have increased the floors from 3 to 5 in this new design. Together with the rooftop facilities, we're hitting 24.6 meters. The planning department did consider the ventilation, and the proposed limit is 25 meters. So we have already optimized the potential there. So in terms of planning, we have taken on board the height proposed by the planning department. Now, the member asked whether there can be flexibility to cater for future development. In fact, on Saturday, we have responded to members' questions, and we said that in the long term, the design of the building, like the LCSD's office, if necessary, there will be flexibility to make adjustment if there is a need for facilities to be put in that building. Certainly, the LCSD's office can be converted to meet the demand. There is an element of flexibility there. So we will consider the situation as it arises. Mr. Wan, I know that in terms of design, you like to segregate the RCP and the street sleeper shelter. Can you be more specific about the details? In terms of design, officially, they belong in the same building. Do you think it is possible to somehow in terms of visual perception, people can make a distinction between the two?
Besides, like we previously mentioned, that for the ground floor LCP and between LCP and SSU, there will be 2 floors of the additional floors, and at the ground floor, even though it is a same building, in terms of the entrances, our consultant have put the 2 entrances furthest as far as possible, and there's also independent and separate lifts, and hope that even though they've been sharing the same building, they will be hope to be segregated. And for the SSU, we try as much as possible. We will try to have as much screening as possible, so that the clients looking from the outside would feel rather spacious, and see more green trees. Mr. Chu, first round, 4 minutes. First, I would like to ask, for the ground floor, I noticed there are 2 public toilets. Are these 2 toilets open to the public, or for the staff of the RCP? Which official to answer, Mrs. Lam? And on the upper right corner, where is for the RCP staff, the public bathroom. This is a standard feature. Mr. Chu, I'd like to follow up. And it is designated for RCP staff. Would they provide a shower and changing facilities? Mrs. Lam, yes. Thank you. Is that the standard for new RCPs, that for the cleaning staff, that a shower and changing facilities will be provided? Mrs. Lam, or which official to answer that? LVHD, Mr. Thank you for the question. And for the new RCP design, we'll try to provide such facilities, taking in consideration of the needs of the staff, so as much as possible, not 100%. Mr. Lam. And for the new ones, you can almost say that these facilities would definitely be in place. A relevant question that I have a written question that have been answered by the Bureau, because now that we are embarking on the area of waste charging scheme, so how do we best utilize the RCP of REHD to promote waste reduction and recycling in the community? This is a direction that we should take. And this proposed a 5-floor structure. The second floor, I do have a specific proposal that for the RCP, whether there is space to be allocated for the recycling and promote waste reduction at the community level. And I'll get a reply that there will be no space for this. So I would like to have an updated proposal. How about on the first floor? I see that you plan to use this space as for storage for the finance and the supply section. Would you consider changing the use into a community resource recovery center? Because we don't want to see that in the past that the RCP seems to be a unwelcome facility in community level, and the SSSU seems to be something not welcome by the community. I hope that we can create a positive image for this facility. So how do we achieve this? I propose that and having this community recycling center at the first floor, in making the entire building to interface with the community, which would shake off the impression of RCP or SSU as an unwelcome facility. So this is a clear suggestion. So which official to answer? HAD. And for the LSD facility on the first and second floor, some members should understand that they have been suggested in the past that there be extend the vertical distance between the SSSU and the RCP. So we have 2 additional floors for VHT, as well as creating a separate access now, which is going back in terms of the works design. We need to redo the drawings, and that would further postpone the commencement. That is not something we would like to see. And we also have asked the department to look into it to see whether there are space at the ground floor for recycling. And the written reply stated that the ground floor did not have sufficient space for this. Ms. Lau, second round, 3 minutes. And in terms of the height restrictions and the stories, seems to be far from satisfactory. However, I'm not chasing on this because I know that there will be no changes from your side. However, have we actually talked to these street slippers to understand their needs, and why we keep on objecting and putting on top of the RCP is not rather of a labeling issue, but because there are issues of ticks and rodents, which the server users seem quite difficult to lift. Installing aircon would actually solve these problems. This is a rather concrete issue, rather have to do with the visual aspect of the labeling. Now that you have additional floors, okay, this is fine. I'm now asking another question quite pertinent to them. I wonder if you've been thinking that as all street laborers are unemployed, actually been working because they have very low bargaining power. We're working on casual jobs like movers and dishwashers and so on. They're usually on night shifts, and most of they could not detain their working hours. I'd like to have asked the SWD, and one of the reasons that you think that there's such a low occupancy rate, besides the takes and road, in terms of the operations, they seem to have a time restriction in which they're required to return to the facility. Otherwise, the SU would be locked and they're not allowed to stay during daytime. And what about those who work in night shifts? Because they do not have bargaining power, they have to work any hours they are required. So now that they do pay for their own of course, they have money to afford hotel. They're going to sleep on the street. So now, of course, they won't prefer SSU. They would rather sleep on the street because they have more freedom of the time and they'll be free of ticks and rodents. So can you tell the operator not to impose such time restrictions? Miss SWG, Miss Ma. In terms of the curfew, because this is collective living arrangements with the security and the operation issues, their time restrictions are necessary. However, for individuals whose circumstances do warrant that, all of these have special circumstances. Ms. Ma, please continue. Please don't interrupt. And hostels are rather a collective living space, and in terms of the operations arrangements, have to cater for the needs of others, and for individual special circumstances with discretion required, the operator will make according arrangements. The arrangement is simple. You can have two wing have a daytime and nighttime. Say you can't just have this arrangement in which the night workers can understand. The operators will have discretion in making arrangements accordingly. And this discretion is rather an abstract answer, not instead of a concrete suggestion, to allow the users to make use of the facilities. I hope such facilities could actually be enjoyed by the users. And I understand from Ms. Ma, in terms of the policy that would allow the operators could exercise discretion. Currently, there are none that the operators don't have such discretion. Can you actually talk to them so that? And for this case, maybe after the meeting you can talk to SWG. If you have a specific cases, I'm sure that they would be glad to understand. There are actually a lot of them. Not that I'm disrespect-free. Next, move on to the next member. However, this is seems to be the norm. Mr. Chen, first round, 4 minutes. And for those member in the previous term, this is actually the third time we come to LegCo for funding, and for the China, we've been receiving views from the Canton's opera community to be obstructing their progress. I hope that they could understand that at the previous two timetable at LegCo, revisions actually been made. And every time they put the table to LegCo, seems to be their best proposal. After they failed the first time, and there have been now a sandwich proposal in which there are 2 additional floors by FCSD in between. And of course, members claim this is a far from satisfactory. It's better yet if we can have separated 2 facilities. Maybe HAD or LCSD could explain that if we could have done they could have already done so. It's probably not something that the Bureau could achieve by itself. However, this is actually a matter of principle that for any construction of new SSSUs, we should not put them together with facilities such as RCP. And now the second time, it's been have a discussion on the aircon. If we can promise right away that you could, with you borne the aircon cost, you would have passed already. Now that you come back to us for the third time, we can see on the revisions that you're willing to offer air conditioning and also offer subsidy for the electric bills. I hope that you, under your proposal, not have to come to election for the 4th time, or other colleagues have per old view. For example, additional floors could be SSU, and it's not bad. Then now you ask for the segregation of floors. So if you have one more floor of SSU, does that shrink the vertical distance? If it seems to be further postponed, so the supplement document seems to maintain the flexibility that the second floor of office will adopt an open plan structure that have some flexibility that could change the use of some of this space. It simply hinted that if should there is such need that the space could convert into SSU. And if so, what are the procedures? Does that count as a new works, or is it a small amount of money? Or maybe after internal discussion that the layout could be reconfigured into SSU. As according to this point, this is not a subtle hint, it's actually made quite clear. So can we have Ms. Lee of HD? Since we be reading the document quite closely, we understand this process. We have to come to this chamber many times. We actually it's actually found this quite hard identifying sites for new facilities in Yau Ma Tei is quite difficult. We know that some facility will need to stay in district to meet the local needs. And in terms of office, if we're able to find space elsewhere, is it necessary to maintain a presence in Yau Ma Tei? It's probably easier to relocate elsewhere. And for a facility, they have to stay in the district. And we have flexibility into our layout. We are willing to give up if such need arises. So we need to see what the alteration is in terms of the layout. We do have flexibility. Maybe we can reconfigure using some minor works project. We see what is the future need would be. However, as I believe the minor works project would suffice. So if the amount is below the certain limit, I do not have to come to Let's Go. So to exceed 30 million, would come to Let's Go, or below that you don't have to. And also, the department has such flexibility.
Yes, your understanding is correct. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, first time, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, last week we went to McPherson playground. I'm not complaining about this, but the shower facilities leave so much to be desired. We play soccer, and there was soccer match, and Mrs. Carrie Lam was there sitting somewhere close by. She said she made a speech, and she said she would show up for this homeless people's soccer match every single year, and the NGOs would be organizing this World Cup of the homeless. This is to show the importance attached to the homeless. Mrs. Carrie Lam says she's been there on many occasions, and when she's cutting the ribbon, she's treasuring the homeless, but when her back is turned, the homeless become trash instead of treasure. So what sort of government do we have? Someone is saying that we are filibustering, but this is a fact of life. Sometimes the pro-establishment members for their own votes will ask for some changes to be made also, and you're blaming us for filibustering. You said that the offices can be reconfigured subject to building safety and fire safety requirements, and subject to availability of resources. Now this is C.Y. Leung talk, and I don't think you should be engaging in this kind of talk. You have all these preconditions imposed. Chairman, if I don't die, if I am a LegCo member, in 2027 Hong Kong will not sink, and the Communist Party will have been toppled, and Hong Kong will see universal suffrage. We're going to have universal retirement protection. What sort of talk is this? Now, let me put this to you here. The subject to building safety and fire safety requirements, And you said that the office can be reconfigured. What have you done? And also subject to availability of resources, what does it mean? Is it the case that, like Chairman said, anything below $30 million, so you don't have to come here, and anything beyond that, you have to come here for funding? I think C.Y. Leung's is still lingering around us. So has C.Y. Leung approved the paper? I would tend to believe that he has approved the paper because he's imposing all these conditions. If something is not exposed, then there will be no problems. That's C.Y. Leung talk. Please explain to us. You said Mr. Raymond Chen is very meticulous in his preparation for the paper, and he's picking up on this. Deputy Secretary, in terms of design, are you making full preparation? Are you able to fulfill all the conditions? Madam Lee, for the office space, there will be some flexibility there. Now, we cited all these considerations when it comes to changes, because we're not sure whether there will be any changes in terms of legislative provisions. If there are more stringent provisions, the future work will have to fulfill the legislative requirements. So we're citing all these considerations. Mr. Holden Chow, 4 minutes for the first time, please. Chairman, thank you. I've got a question about hygiene. The ground floor is taken up by the refuse collection point, and there will be an office in between, and then further up is the street sleepers shelter. I read the paper and also heard from members that they raised the hygienic problem. Para 11E refers to the modern deodorization system to get rid of the odor. I'd like to be more specific. Do you have any standard in terms of the odor? From the paper, the facilities, the systems are good to get rid of the odor. But do you have any standard for the odor, and how do you monitor the situation? There are some other members who made the point that for the street sleepers shelter sitting on top of the RCP, there are rodent problems, there are all manner of undesirable problems. When this project is up and running, how do you go about monitoring the situation? Is it your department that will be tackling the fleas problem, the rodent problem, or will you get the FEHD to deal with it? When this is up and running, will there be any penalty if the rodent infestation is so bad that it has become insurmountable? Which department will be held responsible? Will there be any penalty mechanism there? Also, if I may get my comments in, now this is a sandwich arrangement. You have the office in the middle, and there is an element of flexibility. I fully appreciate this design, but I like to say that if you cannot resolve the hygienic problem, rodent and fleas infestation, then whatever the office is used for, people would feel fair and pleasant, and people will get the perception that this is a place which is infested with rodents and fleas. Whatever use it is going to be used for is going to be not going to be welcome. So any penalty, who is going to be held responsible should there be problems? All right, FEHD, about the RCP, Mr. Lau, please. Chairman, thanks very much for the question. As a result of the reprovisioning, the RCP will be equipped with modern deodorization systems. We have the water scrubber system, which will get rid of the odor. We also have the active ions generator that will be equipped, and the refuse collection vehicles will have an exhaust system fitted on board. At the RCP, we have the wind facilities to make sure that the odor will not be emitting out of the RCP to the detriment of people nearby. In terms of day-to-day management, the refuse would be taken away on a daily basis, and we will be thoroughly cleansing the area. We will making daily rounds to supervise the situation. As soon as the RCVs are out of the place, we will use a bleach 1:99 ratio to cleanse the place. The FHD anti-rodent unit will also be taking action to get rid of the rodents, and mosquito will also be exterminated as well. Mr. Tsuen, hold 4 minutes, please. Chairman, I support this project myself. We've been in discussion for so long. 2011 to 2013, consultation took place at the Yau Cheung District Council. You've been here 3 times. In 2013, you started proposing this reprovisioning. We have been having 2 or more meetings, so this admits of no more delays. Next to the pros and cons, I can't see any cons here. The street sleepers, they are living rough on the street, and there is infestation of cockroaches, rodents, and the person's safety is under threat. For all these, there are so many different threats for them. Now, with regard to this new place, it is a definite improvement. 77 people will be living in this 990 square meters. It is 12.7 square meters per person. It is something like the rental unit standard. There are lockers, air conditioning, lifts, and the scrubber system. They have the multi-purpose function room and the reception room and haircut facilities. It seems that this is more like a service apartment instead of a homeless center. We're not inhumanely putting them just on top of the RCP. It is a 5-story. You have the office segregating them. You have the supplies depot on the first floor, and then the office. Now, how bad the hygienic condition can this be? This doesn't worry me at all. You also have the office, and then further up, you have the street sleepers shelter, and they can get to use the rooftop for some exercise. And you also have security guards monitoring the site. Now we're spending $200 billion for the refuse collection point, and half of the site would be used for street sleepers shelter. It would be far better than if they are living rougher on the street. I think the sooner this happens, the better. Now, some members ask whether we can provide additional extra loading. Now, on the one hand, we're saying that we're being inhumane to them. On the other hand, you're saying that we should build higher to pile more people in. From the data, from the paper, I don't have any problem with the hygienic condition. I'm happy with it. We are in the same boat. Dr. Fernando Cheung said that this is not good enough. I don't think you should criticize the government like this. Now, if you want them to have better condition, why don't you invite them to your home for accommodation? You said you're not filibustering, but I don't think you're looking at the data. It's the difference between living rough on the street and living in this condition. I'm suggesting that we should get on with it as soon as possible. All right, thanks very much. I'm Dr. Fernando Cheung. Second time, 3 minutes, please. Chairman Tsuen is saying that this is so ideal. Why don't you move in there? and live on top of the RCP. If this is such a pleasant condition, I think this is a plot on our copybook. Hong Kong is a city in the 21st century, and we still have to put the street sleeper shelter on top of the refuse collection point, and this is simply not on. I suggest you pay a visit to the Yau Ma Tei facility that is sitting there. You would then understand how hypocritical Hong Kong is. For this reprovisioning project, it is really making us very cross. You have to reprovision the facilities. Now you can put the street sleeper center on top after the reprovisioning. If the Chinese Arts Association can run their affairs there, so be it. But they are reprovisioning the street sleepers service unit because they have to impose some height restriction. Now, for Hong Lau, there is a height restriction, but in the vicinity you have the URA building 30, 40 stories, and they are raking it in. They are cooperating with the developers to rake it in, and they can build as many floors as they like. But across the road, they don't allow a street sleeper center to be rebuilt. Isn't this hypocrisy? Isn't this duplicity? For this new site, there is no height restriction. You say that we cannot build higher. Now, there is no residential dwelling in the vicinity. You say that you cannot build higher. I think we have made concessions after concessions. For the new RCP, you say that the hygienic condition will improve. At the moment, you're running out of space, and it is not full to capacity at the moment. If this is the case, why do you insist on increasing the number of bed space? And you're still insisting on the bunk beds, Mr. Tsuen is Ho. Why don't you pay a visit to them? And they hold down a job after a hard day's job. They're so tired, and you get people moving in and out all the time, and this is a recipe for arguments and disputes. Why don't you talk to the supervisors there? I don't think you have had any regard to the service. You're just making it convenient for you. I mean, you just want to get rid of the street sleepers, get them out of sight, please. You should not be an apologist for the administration.
You can.
I heard that Dr. Cheung raised your views. How about seems to be raising new questions? I'm sure that the comments are noted by those present. Mr. Leung, second round, 3 minutes. I heard from Dr. Ho's that he said him sounds like a service department. And why don't Dr. why don't you open a leave service department? This is all talk. Have you actually visited? I was there all the time. Do you want to go with me? I can take you there tonight. First. So what we've been saying is, you don't seem to be listening. A house is not a home. Even though you own a house, this is not necessarily. This is SSU. This is not the home of the street sleepers. I heard how members should take attention that this questioning round is for members, for them to raise questions, so he can say what he likes. No, it's not. So how to be a chairman? And please don't criticize each other's questions, and please raise some questions about this project. So you should have a direct about him. You seems Dr. Ho is actually commenting on the suitability and design. But so Dr. Ho is entitled to his views. So I'm also entitled to my own views as well. So you should not question other members. Would you like to order me out? Dr. Mr. Leung, please continue. You need to know about this agenda item. First concern would be, please don't put the street sleepers and the RCP in the same spot. This the premises, so it has been separated by an additional story. Everything and Dragon is wrong, so you should be criticizing administration because you should have secure enough votes and make it pass. But they're simply not able to do that, so that's not my business. So to me, I have to call them to corral the votes. So now that you have make revisions, so every time we're obstructed, there seems to be progress. So when Edison invented something, they have a countless number of times of experiment. Nobody would criticize him, so why didn't you get it right the first time? We should all have some decency. If you're willing to take forward, taking a review, you seems to change, and you want to criticize the commenter. So Wei Qing should be killed. He should kill Tang Taizong because he said, "You can tell me anytime in the face." This ancient cause should be eliminated. The kings have said that you should criticize me from time to time because I must miss out something, and you reminded me. Tang Taizong could have made a mistake, could almost kill them, and his wife reminded him. That's what he told him. Now that the basic law has been quite civilized, that we have a role in supervising government. Okay, now you express your views. If you think we've been reasonable why you're revising, okay, now that we have been delayed 3 years and another 3 years. Mr. Leung, first round, 4 minutes. The chairman is getting right there. We've been dragging on 3 years and another 3, and this project seems to stuck at PWSC. And if we have to go, I have doubts of whether you can make it to FC. I feel that for this project, the point of controversy, because after the reprovisioning, you're combining the RCP and the SSU, thus perception-wise is far from satisfactory. However, we do understand the RCP and mixing with residential neighborhoods is a rather common occurrence. And for the public housing estate, there is a garbage area on each floor. We also have always receive complaints that these odor of the crucial have affected the neighboring units, because actually with the residents, in terms of the design, the LCP, I see that mitigation measures have been taken to reduce the odor, as well as to make them as far as part from the SU as possible. I visit quite a few RCPs. I see quite a few of them as only purely for dumping rubbish. This is what's troublesome. You can see the rubbish all over the place, because in Yunlong, next to the new market, after reprovisioning of the RCP, there'll be complaints from the resident nearby. Besides, you can rubbish pick up from the trucks, because a lot of single block buildings actually take their rubbish there. And these are very hard to control the odor from the rubbish. Would you consider compressing the rubbish that would not allow the street refuse to take in? It's quite difficult to because they still need to dump their rubbish. However, assurance have to be made to make sure that you can resolve the hygiene issue that would reduce the nuisance. everyone wouldn't like to have a RCP next to them, and if you're able to find suitable sites to reprovision the SSU is also quite hard too. And currently the location Shanghai Street, you moved to Hau Cheung Street, and now it couldn't work out, so maybe we could relocate to Tsuen. They would not be willing to move there. So this involved basic considerations. So whether objections or filibustering would not make things better. So maybe if we improve on the technical level, it seems to be the best solution. I wonder if the administration have any other suggestions? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. On this project, this new RCP would have adopted modern deodorization technology, and the rubbish collection vehicles are an enclosed design. And owing to special circumstances, and as well as technically feasible, that RCP would allocate space into adopting a double door feature, and that would prevent the odor from escaping. Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of the design, would you completely separate the entrance for rubbish and the humus without just having side by side? They're actually quite far apart. They're in the different directions. Ms. Lam? Our design is to have the access for the RCP and the SSSU is on the two further corner of 18 meters apart. Mr. Hsu, second round, 3 minutes. Just to reply to Mrs. Lee of H.A. Lee, and I said that we have come to the hope that they could be passed this time. And for this kind of project, once been constructed, we stay there for decades. Now the current Yau Ma Tei SU has been here since 1933. So whether it's 2 floors, 3 floors apart, they would exist for the few decades to come. So that's why we're asking questions. I'd like to ask a question. I've been visiting the neighborhood of Yau Ma Tei SSU in terms of the proposed new sites. This rather poor road conditions. Are there a lot of car traffic at great speed, or maybe later at night? A lot of people on carts and transporting fruits, obstructing almost the entire road. For the street slippers, they're not necessarily being amble walker or being very agile, or it could actually be frail or rather clumsy. And the traffic arrangements, the new site, put them at risk. So I would like to ask the administration, when it comes to the decanting of reprovisioning arrangements, would you consider the road conditions? This is a photo of a road subsiding, and for a while, people would trip passing through. This is actual photos taken on mid-May. I hope the officials could respond to this. As you claim that this is the best site available, could you actually rectify the issues that have been demonstrated? Yeah, thank you, members. We have received your letter and reflected your concerns concerning the road conditions near Hau Cheung Street. Upon receiving your letter, we have discussed that with the House Department, and we did dispatch colleagues to visit the site and noticed that some of the road surface are in need of repairs, and they also have contractors to follow up on hoping to pay rise of road surface. Notice on the traffic lighting, as mentioned by Dr. Shaw, we'll keep in touch with Transport Department, and if we have more buildings in the area, they said they would promise to review. They say I thought that they would repave the service in June. So today, June 28th, it has still have been fixed. It's still 2 more days left. I hope that, like you said, they were able to achieve that by the end of June. We still have an hour left to our meeting. And on the screen, I can see that there are 6 more members who would like to speak. We have 1 more. Let me just read out the names. I'm not draw a line here. So, however, if we like to process this project, hope to take note of the time. Mr. Andrew Wen, Dr. Helena Wang, Chu Hoi Dik, Dr. Lau, second time speaking, the third time speaking, Dr. Wang, Dr. Finan Chong, and Liang Guohong. Now, next we have Dr. Andrew Wen, 3 minutes. I hope the officials know that we support this project in principle. There's no dispute that there are not enough bed spaces for street sleepers. The officials the colleague have dated the reason that we're asking questions. We appreciate that revisions had to be made after our questioning. I understand each have been drawing questions. So we ask a few more questions and hope this question also constructive, and you can look into and consider it. As for whether it's possible to have an additional floor, and I will get a reply that this is actually possible. I noticed this a separate elevator, and would you have whether achieve the floor or a separate elevator reaching every floor? I hope you could explain that. I noticed a lot what have they missed in the document. You haven't stated clearly that lecture takes of a separate showers and changing room. Can you point that out where you mentioned in the paper? I thought that this I did an RCP, and besides perception-wise, only actual about in terms of bringing a lot of odors. And you mentioned that the use of water scrubbers and active irons. I know that out there, besides double roller shutters, I noticed there about technology called biodeodorization. Would you consider using bacteria or using all possible suggestions? Because since the RCP is too close, I think that this is rather uncommon in Hong Kong. Thus, I see that if there's anything more that you can do, Ms. Lam. So maybe just answer the question on the elevator and deodorization. The first, in terms of the elevator, there's a separate elevator to the SSU.
Now, from the diagram, you get to see this for the ground floor. Operationally, there may be time for maintenance, and we would have flexible treatment, and the lifts can be changed. Mr. Wen, the lift for the street sleepers shelter, this will stop on every floor, wouldn't it? Mrs. Lam? If the office floor is converted into a street sleeper shelter or other purposes, the lift can serve that floor as well. Ordering, the authorization, Mr. Lam? Chairman, for the newly designed RCPs will have the deodorization system that I mentioned, and they are operating to good level. The biochemical treatment mentioned by the member, I think we have to consider this, Mr. Wan. What about the shower facilities? Mr. Lam. In the RCP, we do provide a toilet and a shower facilities. Where is it? Have I missed it on the plan, on the diagram? Who can take the question, please? In the RCP, if you look at the layout plan, Appendix 2, the shower facility is incorporated into the toilet. So the toilet contains a shower facility. Well, you can have a curtain and a bucket. You can still serve the same purpose. They can supplement further information after the meeting with more design details. Mr. Eddie Chu, 3 minutes second time, please. Chairman. 2 questions. The first one is a follow-up from the previous one. The administration may not get my point. For the first floor, the depot can be converted into a resource recovery center, and it doesn't necessitate any changes to the layout. These centers are operating in the form of a depot, and they can pick out the recyclable materials. And I know that it is the EPD that is responsible for that. Will the Bureau consider any changes to the use of the first floor? Deputy Secretary? Now for the LCSD's depot, this is indeed for the department. We have been identifying the site for these operational needs. So this is for this purpose. Now this is to take care of the operational needs of the FHD. As regards the provision of a recovery center, I know the EPD does have some pilot areas, although not in this location. Mr. Atichu, this is a question for the FHD, Mr. Lam. I know that in some new RCPs, they are located on the ground floor of new buildings. A case in point is in Wan Chai and Sanpa Street. Can you confirm to me, now for these new RCPs with new technology, are you free from many rodent and odor problems, and there are no complaints from the residents nearby? Mr. Lam. Thanks very much, Chairman, and thank you for the question. Now, for Sampan Street, over the past 5 years, our record show that there have been no complaints. Mr. Zhu. Did the cleaners report any problems involving rodents and all the infestation and pest problems as experienced by other RCPs? Mr. Lam. Chairman, for the RCPs, we fully appreciate that these facilities may attract the pests, so the pest control team would take regular measures to deal with the problem. Mr. Jonathan Ho, 4 minutes for the first time. I must make a declaration. I'm living in this area. Now, as a kid, I would cart the rubbish to the RCP there. I think for this site, it is convenient. But I've got a question about the planning. I would push my kid across the road there, and I agree with Ms. Yukajun that there are potholes there. There are problems indeed. Now, to the south of this project, there is a site for which there is no plan. I understand from the planning department that it is going to be used for a junction. The the railway line is going to be somewhere there. Now this junction, how soon is it going to be opened? And also the central line, the Yau Ma Tei exit. You have the green deck that is in the vicinity. When I was in university, I did some research on the central Kowloon line, and I heard that there is a platform they can take people all the way to the Prosperous Garden. I'm wondering whether this plan still exists. Right now, if you go from Prosperous Garden, you have to go through a tunnel. So this greenery deck, is it? What are the opening hours? And the Yau Ma Tei Park, there doesn't seem to be any closure time. Is this like a basketball court, which will be opened at 11 p.m. every day? Deputy Secretary, if I may try, Chairman, the Hau Cheung Street to the south. I'm not sure we're talking about the same junction to the south. I understand that the East Kowloon line, they require the site for the work purposes. Note the GIC site to the south, there is a zone without any planning, and there is only the remark saying that it is a junction. So how soon are you going to convert that into a road, or you don't have any timetable for that for the time being? Deputy Secretary? Our understanding is that there are some GIC sites. Now, when they're building the central Kowloon line, they need the site for work purposes. After 2024, this will be converted into a greenery, a green belt, a green site, and the area will be taken up for the central Kowloon line. Mr. Ho, my second question, the central Kowloon line, the green deck. Will people travel all the way here on the green deck? Deputy Secretary? I'll liaise with the relevant department and supplement the information afterwards. Yes, please do. Dr. Helena Wong, 2 minutes for the third time. Chairman, that the Democratic Party would like to take this opportunity to increase the number of bed space for the street sleepers. That's why we're suggesting that the office floor should be converted into street sleepers shelter. Now, you said that this is served by the lift, and I think where the office is, you should convert it into a street sleepers shelter. It's a question of numbers. I hope that the SWD will give the undertaking that more resources will be devoted to make sure that the number will increase to 70 to no less than 140 with an additional floor. We hope that the number can be doubled. Yau Cheung and Sam Shui Po, according to the statistics, those who have registered on the list, the number stands at 741, 366 plus 375. In Sam Shui Po and Yau Cheung districts, the provision is 392, so there is a shortfall there. Dr. Fernando Cheung said that you have the bunk beds, which cannot be used in so many situations. So the SWD should be aware that in Sam Shui Po and Yau Cheung districts, the government does need to plow in more resources to provide self-sufficient or subsidized places. I hope that the SWD will confirm to me that whether there is a shortfall, if we can convert that office floor, then it would be a good idea. Would you give us the undertaking there? Madam Ma. Chairman, thank you. Assistant Director. We heard members' concerns about this. We will obviously review the level of service. In 2016-17, we have increased more resources. 20 have been added. And that covers Yau Cheung district as well. I appreciate that that's not the ultimate solution to the problem. We're not meeting all the demand, so we will review the level of demand. Where necessary, we will seek further resources to upgrade the service. And the design of the building can convert the office space. Dr. Wang, I hope that you will talk with the new administration and increase the number of bed space for the street sleepers. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 2 minutes for the third time. The SWD has been rather ambiguous in their reply. I'm following up on Mr. Yu Xi-wing's question. This facility will be air-conditioned. This is an improvement. But what about other street sleepers centers? They have the same organization, Hau Cheung Street, Wan Chai, run by the Street Sleepers Shelter Society Trustees Incorporated. Now you talked about self-sufficiency, and this is leaving people scratching their heads. The government should offer more subsidy in this regard. I think for other centers, they should be equally air-conditioned. So in the light of this upgraded facility, will you be prepared to air-condition all the other street sleeper centers? You said that they can make application for resources. It's a question of making a one-off application. Are you going to provide recurrent funding for the air conditioning and support? Are you going to have any commitment there? Madam Ma, thanks very much. Mr. Dr. Zhang, fully understand that. Now, for the recurrent expenditure, as I said just a moment ago, on 1st of April this year, all the subsidized accommodation, including that for the street sleepers, we have increased the recurrent subsidy for air conditioning, and so this has been provided for, as I said a moment ago, for the existing street sleepers facilities. It's only this year that we provide for the recurrent support. If they have to equip air conditioning, we will liaise with the NGOs and follow up on this.
As for the SSI TI, as for on this self-financing SS Students Accommodation Service, would you shoulder the recurrent expenditure, Ms. Ma? Would discuss with the an operator, because this is a self-operating unit, and we also respect the planning and the intentions of the operator. So we'll discuss with them afterwards. Actually, I've discussed with them. They mentioned that they would like to install aircon. They've been worried that then after the completion of the new facility, the other facilities seems to create an imbalance. Okay, so Dr. Chen had made the views clear. That's going to be followed up afterwards in terms of the enhancement facilities and others. Okay, I'd like to draw the line because we have Mr. Chairman Ho and Julius, Dr. Ho, Dr. Lau, and Dr. Chen. We need to process this today. I hope we can put to a vote after this member has spoken, and we could not able to meet that at about 10:30, so maybe we can extend the meeting by 15 minutes at most. Mr. Chen, first round 4 minutes. A brief question. To ask about the aircon. Is there any restriction as for if it had to be aircon had to be installed? At first, you have to have identified suitable location for the installation, and also the power loading must be able to handle that. And now that you would said that we discuss with the operators, and in terms of the objective circumstances, is it possible to retrofit with aircons? Maybe I think each unit have a different circumstances, Miss Lam. I'm sure this is definitely okay because the other two floors are equipped with aircon as well. So it'll be converted into bed spaces. It also should be aircon. As for whether for the expenditure, this is rather a subsequent question. Are you asking about if other facilities could be retrofitted with aircon? So this. Ms. Ma. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the welfare facilities, we discussed with the individual operators and follow up with them, and this is what we will be taking forward. And for the Dr. Cheng's question, that we would discuss with the operators and the NGOs, can you tell us that whether in the next 3 months or next 6 months that you would try to wrap up the discussion with the NGOs? And because the provider of street sleeper service, there are just actually quite a few of them. Thus, we would expedite the communications, as some of them discussion already underway. And gradually, we hope that the arrangements could be made. Understand? I know that you're trying to arrange with them. Actually, a few providers of such services. So, is there a timetable? Let's say allegedly, I'm not sure, I don't know the number of providers. Let's say 10 or 8. So, how long would you take to discuss? I'm not talking about achieving results, but at least you could establish communications. So when would you essentially say, you can talk to them in 2 weeks or 1 month, a month, or 6 months, a year? It's just a quite simple question, Chairman. And we have ongoing communications with them. However, some operators may need more time. However, due to the locations, individual units, and the circumstances, and so on. And we're actually quite concerned about this. Some organization we'll be discussing with them, so hope we can expedite the process. Mr. Chu had a motion according to 32A. Any 32 motions, I will only hope that we have time for this. Mr. Leung, third round. And the enclosure 4, you mentioned that the showers installed, and so it's next to the caretaker walkers and adjacent to the bedrooms. The kitchen also there. And for the kitchens and the showers, is that for the caretakers, the supervisors, or for the street sleepers, the client themselves? Enclosure 4, the blue portion. Second question. You know that there will be recurring subsidy. Was that pay for the power bills or for the installation of air conditioners? The third question. The timetable. You said when the street sleepers to have a low occupancy of the SSU, we actually asked the street sleepers themselves, and some of them are actually on night shifts. And of course, they couldn't sleep at your units at night, and so gradually they would stop staying there. And because of the curfew imposed, this question already been answered, and this actually been dealt with flexibly, and allow the operators to Chairman, can you stop interrupting me? Because members have been asking between street sleepers. This seems to not be happening. So why are you interrupting? Let Ms. Ma answer your question. I'm correcting them that not being flexible. Now that you pointed out, Ms. Ma, 3 question answer. Liar. On the kitchen and the shower areas for the caretakers and not for the service users. Let me talk about the amenities for the facility. And enclosure 4, the third floor kitchen and would be for the street sleepers. And for the fourth floor, the upper right corner, these are for the caretakers. So you haven't made it clearly, and then Julio was claimed that it's a service apartment. What is it talking about? But Dr. Cheung, fourth round, 1 minute. Dr. Cheung. Now the you're assuming the bunk bed will be used at the SSU on the top floor. The 70 spaces were based on the assumption of using bunk beds. Ms. Ma? Because the existing court reprovisioning of the Shanghai Street facility, original design will be using bunk beds, so that they will be used in the new site as well. I found this problematic. As I pointed out earlier, the bunk beds create a lot of conflicts. This is an unsatisfactory arrangement, and I wonder if you're familiar with that. You actually have a registration system that you know that the age of the street sleepers are rather on the old side, and the bunk beds are not suitable for the street sleepers. Is it possible to have any improvements, whether on the subsidized or the self-financing facilities? And currently this existing unit, because on this self-financing service, we've been discussing with the operators. Is this a reprovisioning of the service, and we'll have to take into account the number of spaces provided, so that without affecting the number of spaces provided, we shall adopting the existing arrangement. So you have drawn the line. So can you give me some flexibility? So we'd like to finish. This is far from satisfactory. We all know that bunk beds are not suitable anymore for street sleepers. Your planning cannot be based on bunk beds. Thus, for this new facility, just like the Democratic Party had proposed, that about allocating more space into providing more bed spaces, and even for the taking care of the bunk beds, that alone you need more space. That you have expressed that. Could you just put it concisely, please? And for the RCP on the ground floor, for the storage, FPHD have claimed that shower facilities will be provided. Can you point out, that they are used for staff, by staff? There's a lot of outsourced cleaners does not have a locked storage facility or not allowed to use their showers and so on. Mr. Lam, you know the question. Can you please answer that? Thank you, Chairman. These facilities are for those who work in the RCP. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Leung, fourth round, 1 minute. After Mr. Leung, and we have a 32A by Mr. Chu. Mr. Leung, you seem to be in a rush. We have a flexibility allowing street sleepers to stay during daytime. Is there any code of practice to follow for exercising this discretion? And if discretion could be exercised, is there any case compiled records of exercising the discretion? If so, please provide it. If no, it's just pointless for the chairman to interrupt. So there's no flexible arrangement. It's about rejecting with flexibility with all sorts of reasons. It's simply be a great. This panel is full of lies. Can Ms. Mai answer the question? The SSU and Yau Ma Tei, how about the others? They have them. So you're subsidizing without regulating them. I hope that you could not interrupt them. You're interrupting me as well, Miss Ma. For the subsidized accommodation is open to street sleepers all day. So does that mean that Dr. Lau made a mistake? A misspoke? Let's keep this on. Put this on record. Let's project it on the screen. You have a 45-minute bell. Can you read that out, Mr. Chu? According to Section 32A of the PWSC meeting rules, to tie in with the waste reduction and recycling policy of the government and the closer connection between the all-new RCP and SSSU, this PWC requests into converting the first floor storage of the building into a community resource recovery center to be operated by EPD and the NGOs to serve the community.
I just received from Dr. Helena Wong a 32A proposal. I will deal with these as well. I said that I'd like to extend the meeting to 10:45, and I heard no objection, so we're here till 10:45.
可以處理哦，都影啦，打上去算啦。各位而家要表決嘅就係
Members, we're voting on Mr. Ju's motion under 32A, which has been shown on the screen. Another one by Dr. Helena Wong.
好，而家進行表決。
Will members please proceed to vote? Before I end the vote, please check your votes. Voting now ends. I display the results. 41 present, 18 for, 22 against, no abstention. The motion has been negatived. Another one by Dr. Helena Wong. You claim a division? Yes, I do. 5 minutes, please. Division bell will ring for 5 minutes. May I, Chairman? Yes, please. This committee requests that the second floor IT office be converted into a shelter for the street sleepers, and the number of bed space should be no more than 70 there on this floor.
七四號未宣佈咗未㗎？通告咗啦，好好，搞掂。OK。夠時間，夠時間。各位而家要投票嘅呢就係。
All right, members, we are voting on the motion put forward by Dr. Helena Wong under 32A as shown on the screen. Right, let's put it to the vote. Before I bring it to a close, please check the votes. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, haven't pressed the button. I support this. All right, voting now ends. I display the results. 42 present, 17 for, 22 against, 2 abstentions. The motion has been negatived, so we're not dealing with this anymore unless members have any further questions. And I'll put this to the vote. PWSC 2017-18 for. Does any member claim a division? No. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Dr. Fernando Cheung claims the division. The bell will go for 5 minutes. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, you want separate voting when it comes to the FC subject to this being endorsed here.
各位而家投票嘅呢，就係
Right, members, we're voting on the paper, on the proposal.
PWSC
PWSC 2017 to 18-4.
好，現在進行表決，喺個宣佈停止表。
Right, let's proceed to the vote. Before I bring it to a close, please check your votes. Voting now ends. I display the results. 44 present, 37 for, no objection, 6 abstention. The paper will be submitted to the Finance Committee in July. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong made a request a moment ago that this be dealt with separately at the Finance Committee. The next meeting is the 4th of July, a Tuesday, between 9 and 1. Thank you very much for coming.